Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
Cross your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Welcome, Scream Things. I'm your host, Jenica Olin. This is my 32nd episode. My theme for this month is June of the Dead. This week, we're holed up in a monument to modern excess, surrounded by a slow-moving, ever-growing herd of dead, where society's collapse mirrors the emptiness of the modern world. Trapped in a consumerist nightmare, survivors take refuge in an unlikely haven, only to discover that the real horror isn't just outside. If you're new here, each episode will have an intro, brief synopsis of the movie, an analysis of the film, and then I get into the true horrors of it all. I'm a huge true crime fan, and I like to make connections between the true horrors that inspire our darkest imaginations. The truth is, the stuff on screen is way tamer than the true horrors that take place every day. Spoiler alert, I've made it my job to spoil the shit out of this movie. Today I'll be covering the 1978 classic, Dawn of the Dead, directed and written by George Romero, starring David M.G., Ken Foree, and Scott Renninger. The estimated budget was $650,000. The tagline for this film, Night of the Living Dead is over, Dawn of the Dead is here. Some quick trivia about this film. The MPAA had threatened to impose a X rating if George Romero didn't make cuts. Romero didn't want to cut the film, and he was adamant against an X rating due to its stigma of hardcore pornography. In the end, Romero was able to persuade his distributors to release the film with no rating. Although on all advertising and trailers, there was a disclaimer that read, while there was no explicit sex in the film, the movie was of such a violent nature that no one under 17 should be admitted. Director George Romero had already wanted to hire Tom Savini to do the special makeup effects for Night of the Living Dead, but Savini, who served as a combat photographer in the U.S. Army, couldn't commit because he had to go on tour in Vietnam. Fortunately, he was available to do this film, and his recent Vietnam experience played an enormous part of his visualization of the graphic, gory effects, as he was basically just recreating what he'd seen in real life. Some of the actors playing zombies in the movie would frequently get drunk at the late-night bar called Brown Derby, which was in the Monroeville Mall. One night, they stole a golf cart and crashed into a marble pillar, causing $7,000 worth of damage. Much of the fake blood used in the blood packets was a mixture of food coloring, peanut butter, and sugarcane syrup. The idea for the film came about when George Romero was invited by friend Mark Mason to the backstage tour of the recently completed Monroeville Mall. Mason noted to Romero that this would be the perfect place to hole up in during an emergency, planting the seed in Romero for his next film. Dawn of the Dead was intentionally more comedic than Night of the Living Dead, because George Romero wanted it filmed in the style of a comic book. This year is also the 45th year anniversary of this movie. Let's set the scene with a synopsis of the movie.
In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time.
Not that room! Not that room!
Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times.
It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill. This situation must be controlled before it's too late. They are multiplying too rapidly.
Tensions are running high in the United States. The recently deceased are returning to life as shambled, flesh-eating ghouls, and political dissidents are threatening social stability. Fran, an employee of WGON TV and radio, learns that her program director, Givens, is broadcasting out-of-date information about rescue stations that have been overrun by the living dead. Fran's boyfriend, Steven, who pilots the station's traffic helicopter, arrives at the station and tells her that they must escape in order to survive. He plans on stealing the station's helicopter and tells Fran to meet him on the roof. Meanwhile, in another part of Philadelphia, the city's SWAT team is preparing to launch an assault on a low-income tenement building filled with African American and Hispanic refugees who refuse to leave their homes for emergency shelters. They also refuse to give up their dead, harboring them in the basement of the tenement. After a gun battle with armed bandits on the roof, the police and National Guard soldiers break into the building using tear gas. Roger, one of the SWAT troopers, becomes disgusted by the bloodthirsty behavior of some of their fellow SWAT members, which one of them, named Wooly, goes crazy and begins shooting at both zombies and innocent bystanders. A tall figure in a gas mask shoots the rogue officer dead. Roger retreats to the basement to escape the confusion, but the tall figure follows him. He removes his mask and reveals himself to be an imposing man named Peter. Roger tells Peter about his friend who has a helicopter. He plans to leave with Stephen and Fran and suggests Peter join their escape. The two SWAT men are startled when an elderly Hispanic priest emerges from a room in the cellar. He tells them that he has administered the last rites to the dead people in the next room, and that the soldiers may now do what they will with them.
I have given them the last rites. Now, you do what you will.
Peter and Roger kill all the zombies in the cellar, nearly overcome by the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Stephen and Fran arrive in their helicopter at the abandoned police station pier. They're surprised when 4 rogue policemen arrive and threaten them for looting the place. Roger and Peter arrive, and the rogue cops back down, allowing the 4 to go on their way. The 4 of them fly all night. In the morning, Stephen lands the helicopter at a small deserted rural airport depot to refuel. Zombies wandering nearby or lurking among the scant cover attack them. Stephen tries to prove his manliness before Fran, who's carrying his child, but he's both clumsy and a poor shot. Roger has to kill the zombies Stephen weakly shoots at, and Stephen nearly kills Peter when aiming for a zombie. Peter becomes infuriated, aiming his rifle at Stephen to scare him. Later, while in the air again, they see a deserted shopping mall. They land on its roof and break in through the skylight to rest and to collect supplies. The parking lots are full of zombies, and the interior of the mall has many of them milling about inside. The group theorized that the undead are drawn to a place that had meant something to them when they were alive.
They're after us. They know we're still in here.
They're after the place. They don't know why, they just remember.
Despite the growing number of undead outside, the 4 refugees realized that they could survive there for a long time, using the mall's floor plans and master keys. Peter, Roger, and Stephen race around the mall, collecting the supplies they need to make a home. Fran is resistant to the idea. She thinks it's a bad idea to leave what is left of society. She's later accosted by one of the zombies and insists that she never be left alone again, and that they teach her to shoot properly so she can defend herself, and that Stephen teach her how to fly the chopper if anything happens to him. The next day, the group realizes they need to clear all the walking dead out of the rest of the mall. A decision is made to block the entrances to the mall with semi-trucks from a nearby warehouse. While Stephen circles the operation in his helicopter, Peter and Roger hotwire the trucks and drive them to the mall. Peter is disturbed that Roger seems to be losing his grip on reality. He becomes arrogant and takes unnecessary risks, earning a stern lecture from Peter, who tells him he's risking his partner's life as much as his own. Roger is still arrogant and dismissive, and unfortunately, he's bitten by zombies. They all realize that Roger's wound will prove fatal, as nobody can survive a bite for more than a few days. Fran is conflicted. She wants to take Roger to the medical facility, but the others won't hear of it. They're convinced Roger is doomed, but decide to let the disease run its course. Peter and Stephen build a fake wall in front of the only hallway that leads to their home, disguising it from any potential looters that may come through the area. They monitor a television to see if the zombie crisis ever ends, but the news is dismal. Roger makes Peter promise to kill him if he reanimates. When Roger turns, Peter is forced to shoot his animated corpse in the head. One night, Peter prepares a romantic dinner for Fran and Stephen. When Peter leaves them alone, Stephen proposes marriage to Fran. Fran declines, saying that they can't make that kind of commitment given what has become of the world. It wouldn't be real, she explains. Stephen seems to be depressed by her refusal. Over the next few months, the three survivors, Stephen, Fran, and Peter, have hauled various items from the mall in the office space as their home. By now, there are hundreds of zombies wandering around the empty acres of the parking lot that surrounds the mall. Eventually, all television and radio transmissions cease. The remaining three bicker as their sense of isolation and claustrophobia gets stronger. During one of her flying lessons, Fran and Stephen are spotted by a gang of motorcycle-riding survivalists who have been casing the mall. That evening, the survivalists' looters approach, coveting the supplies inside the mall. They try to contact Peter, Fran, and Stephen by radio, but Peter is smart enough not to respond. His plan is to let the looters break in and take what they want, then leave. The looters break into the mall, and zombies flood in with them. Stephen, believing the mall belongs to him and his friends, sneaks into the mall and tries to shoot the bikers who return fire. With no choice but to help his friend, Peter creeps through the air shafts, picking off isolated bikers and zombies. Unable to cope with both Peter and zombies, the bikers decide to leave. Before they do, two of them enter the elevator where Stephen is hiding on top and begin blindly shooting. He's later attacked and bitten by zombies and dies in the elevator. Peter returns to their hidden apartment and waits for Fran. They are unsure if Stephen has survived, but they know he will return either way. Now a zombie, Stephen remembers how to get through the hidden wall in the storeroom. He leads the horde of zombies up the stairwell. When zombie Stephen appears, Peter kills him. He tells Fran to leave, refusing to go with her. Peter stays in the storeroom, waiting for the zombies to flock in and planning to shoot himself before they can grab him. But at the last minute, he decides he wants to live and fights his way through the zombies to the helicopter. Fran delayed taking off until the last possible moment, and Peter's able to hop into the helicopter. The two fly off to an uncertain future with a little fuel left.
So now it's time to talk horror, and today my guest is Sam Stewart. He's the bassist and singer of Flagman, an awesome band, and you guys have been doing some really great things. Like, you've been getting a lot of attention for your band recently.
Yeah, trying. Always out there.
So what are you working on right now? Where can people find you?
So right now we're working on a record, but it always takes a million years longer than you think it's going to. So in the meantime, I'm working on an EP, and we have some dates in the fall to look out for. Hopefully get some new music out here around that same time. But yeah, anywhere you find music, Flagman, at Flagman Band on most social medias. That's where you can find us, follow us for updates. Yeah,
you guys have the really good You Can Suck Me Off right now that you are singing to.
Yep, Meaty Lance with my friend Neil. Yeah, that's what happens when you're driving around in the tour bus. It's a van. And we've got, hours to go to wherever we are. It's just start singing about dicks and farts. And it turned in from Safety Dance to Meaty Lance. Here we are. Smash hit. That's really the type of intellect you're dealing with.
Yes. Very smart. I mean, it's smart in its own way. It has its own reach.
I appreciate it.
Of course. So today we're here to talk about Dawn of the Dead, the original Dawn of the Dead from 1978. So it's the 45th birthday for this film. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's as old as Pete.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did Pete watch it with you?
No. He did. We actually, I hadn't watched the original. I had watched the remake, and
Sure.
I didn't realize how different the tone would be. And
Yeah.
it's very different.
Which I enjoy the 2004. They're very different. It feels like one thing I really appreciate about 1978 is I think a lot of zombie movies or like apocalypse movies or whatever
Yeah.
do the thing where they show you the world falling apart and then they skip to now the world's over, right? And it's like whatever. This movie like feels like the most realistic version of the apocalypse because it starts and everybody's still at work. You like they're all still having to do their jobs and nobody really knows what's going on. Some people aren't taking it seriously. It's like, oh, damn, this is like what it's really like. You know, people are out there drinking beers with this, like shooting the zombies and stuff. I really appreciated that, you know?
Yeah, no, there was a lot of comedy in it. And like the lighting, the way that the blood was filmed, the way that the makeup was done was all very purposefully comical. Like he wanted it, Romero wanted it to look like a comic book. And I was like doing all my research. That's what I saw him say. And I guess like Night of the Living Dead, is the predecessor for this one. And that one, there's a lot of commentary on racism and social constructs and things like that. But it wasn't as purposeful as within this movie. He definitely had those messages in there. And then when he realized, I guess, how, like, he kind of subconsciously did it. And then he was like, okay, with Dawn of the Dead, he's like, I'm going to be very purposeful.
Yeah.
So this one's even like more in your face with its messaging and themes and stuff like that. So we've got our opening scene, which is very chaotic. They're in the broadcasting studio and there's subsequent raids going on, militaries kind of gunning down, dead everywhere. And it's really brutal, but you're getting a lot of like the chaos and the disinformation that's happening at the same time. Like, so what did you think about that? Like everyone's in that, TV studio and they're all arguing about what is the best way to handle the situation.
I mean, like we were talking about before we started recording, it feels like the most like realistic apocalypse scenario. All these people still have to be at their job. The boss of the broadcasting station wants to keep the camps on the screen because even though they're not there anymore, he's like, every second they're not on the screen, we don't have viewers, right? He's trying to pull people in to like as they're abandoning their thing. Who knows how to work the console,
Yeah.
And yeah, you start to see like like you said, the institutions starting to just kind of crumble, even among the Peter and the rest of the police. Everybody's kind of like, how do we get out of this? I love the guys like, we're gonna go to the island. He's like, what island? Any island. They're all getting on the boat to leave.
I think, when it comes to this and like Romero and the message he was trying to send, there's a lot of like distrust of authority that we have, especially with media. And I think that's the reason why we have so many, there's so much like information that's out there, right? And it's so hard to tell what's bullshit and what's not bullshit. Like who's just trying to get views versus who's the genuine,
Right, what should we actually do,
like news outlet, like the producers have a completely different agenda than the big companies. Media, I think around this time too, like media, people started to not trust the media. I mean, TV had been around for quite a while already, but the way that it was being used was changing.
Right. Like actual, like, was this probably would have been around the time, like start of the 24-hour news cycle and stuff like that. I know there was a lot of like broadcast of Vietnam, which kind of influenced a lot of, I'm sure some of this stuff, like how the media is covering those events and things like that.
Exactly. And there's a lot of post-Vietnam War stuff in this movie, which is, We didn't take care of our vets. I'll say that. But yeah, they argue over should they evacuate, and of course, prioritizing ratings and perception over lives. So it's like fun
And it's
stuff.
interesting too how they like throughout, even while they're held up at the mall, right? They're still watching those broadcasts of the. I don't even know if he has a name. The guy with the eye patch, who's "We must remain rational." That guy, like they're still debating, right? And the world's ended or is ending. I love that too. Like kind of the ambiguity of like the state of the world outside of where they're at. Right. This is all they have to watch. A couple guys still arguing over what's happening,
Yes.
as everything's falling apart.
Yeah, no. And, that broadcasting piece is important because once that ends, then it's like, oh shit, everything's gone. And while everyone's arguing about what to do and how to handle it, the zombies are accumulating and all they have to do is sit and wait
Yeah.
because we're destroying ourselves from the inside,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Which,
It's like I think it's the priest at the very beginning. I think it's like when you're at war with the dead, the only way we win is when the killing stops, right? And then, what ends up being the undoing is not really the zombies as much as it is those other people come in and let everything in, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then turning against, if we just helped each other instead of constantly, fighting each other,
Right.
we could do a lot more, probably get a
Sure.
lot more done. Right after, everything's happening, there's chaos ensuing, misinformation going around. We get to the SWAT team raiding a predominantly Black and Spanish housing project, which is like a very dark scene in this movie. Probably, I think, one of the darkest moments. And there's intense gunfire, racial tension. This guy, I think his name was Wooly, he's like throwing around racial slurs everywhere. And he starts just gunning down anyone. It doesn't matter if they're undead or not, he's shooting anyone and he sees them all as enemies. Until we finally get our hero and he comes and like shoots him. So what were your thoughts like when watching that part?
Like you said, it's been a long time since I watched the 78. Definitely one of the like darker scenes in the movie because I remembered like the pies in the face of the zombies at the end and like the kind of the lighter bits because it's been like 10, 15 years since I watched it, and it really opens with a kind of a smack in the face with this like, oh yeah, the racist cops are going to go in and they're just going to slaughter whoever. But that's what he's treating it rather than like, we're here to protect people. Hey, this is just, wholesale violence for you. You can just do whatever you want now. As you see the rules start to break down, right?
Yeah.
And then as he's doing it, he's kind of before they even go in, he's, throwing around slurs and talking about how he wants to kill everybody. And you don't really see anybody around him say anything or do anything. They're just kind of like, oh, huh. Until Peter steps in and shoots him. Well, actually, what is his name?
The other one was Roger, I think.
Roger, that's right.
Yeah,
Roger tries to
Roger.
stop Wooly. But even in that scene, pretty much everybody else is just kind of standing around while he's like trying to stop this guy from going nuts. Yeah, definitely drops you into the world. Shit is very real.
Very, it's just showing the systematic racism that's already within our police force and within the SWAT team. And I felt so bad for Roger because he's like the one Black guy in that group, and he has to deal with these people and he has to try to protect. Peter also has like sympathy and he also has understanding. But when it came to Roger, they really just showed like his shock of what was happening with these people. And he got to like kind of get the insider view of how these communities are being treated. And had he not been on that side of the gun on their team, then he would have been targeted just the same.
Yeah.
I think that message kind of lands well. I mean, it can never land well, but I think that it comes across.
Definitely.
And yeah, so these people they're not treated like civilians, they're treated like criminals because they don't want to give up their dead. They have a mistrust for the media, for law enforcement, and I can't blame them, especially with the historical context that's around this time.
And then even what happens, right? It's like these are supposed to be people that are here to like protect you and enforce order, and everybody's just running crazy, shooting everybody, you know? So it's like, yeah, of course they don't trust you when you're like, hey, we are telling you to do this. Like, well, why would they listen to you?
Yeah, there was a lot of civil unrest in this time. Like the line between enforcement and murder is kind of obliterated in this movie. And Romero critiques the growing use of force in urban settings because it was, especially post-Vietnam War during civil unrest of the 1960s and 70s, you just had this overwhelming police force showing up in these communities under the guise of we're here to protect you, but really when it came down to it, it was they weren't really seeing the difference between whenever you have this kind of systemic racism, everyone's just kind of clumped together, which is what we're seeing nowadays too, which is really fucked up with like the ICE raids and stuff.
Yeah.
So, because there are a lot of people who are being targeted, Black and brown people are being targeted right now.
It is like all these themes that they're touching on from 45 years ago. It is, yeah, pretty sad how relevant it still is, right? You know, from the mistrust in the media and like the breakdown of the institutions to the militarized police, that they don't discriminate in that with the way they use violence, right? It's just that's the tool for across the board. Primarily minorities catch the brunt of that. You know, because like just in this movie, right? They're going into the rundown apartment complex. There are gang members in there.
It's like the projects, basically.
Right? Yeah. There are some gang members in there, but there's lots of people that are just living their lives. But like you said, the SWAT team that goes in doesn't see any difference, and so they're just like Wooly or whatever his name is. It's kind of taking it as just okay, perfect. I can just go and shoot anybody now,
Yeah, no, it becomes this like open invitation whenever you have this prejudice kind of filtering. It's like the opposite of rose-colored glasses, right? Like you've got these tinted glasses of prejudice that are, whenever you go into a room, you're not going to see the difference between the wife who's trying to take care of her family and the zombie that's sitting in the next room. It's like shoot first, ask questions later too, all in the name of survival and protection.
Yeah.
And so I make that connection to the other zombie movies because that's what zombie movies are essentially about. They're about social collapse, and then the true horrors are the humans and what we do in those instances. So this is a sad month. This is fucked up. I cover movies that are not this bad. And it's like listening to some of my episodes, I'm like, this is a depressing month. And it came at a depressing time too, with like everything socially and like all the political stuff going on. And I'm like, oh, I really fucked myself here.
or maybe it's the perfect time,
Yeah.
Get into all these like we said, still very relevant topics, unfortunately.
Yeah. But then I have to deal with people like getting pissed off at the fact that I'm actually like pointing these things out. And they're like, I do get a lot of backlash on social media. And I think partially it's because I'm a female and partially because it's just like people don't want to hear this stuff. But I'm also like, if you're one of those people that has a problem, fuck you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for real. Again, we were talking about this too before we started recording, like people that can watch a movie like this and be like, hey man, this is just a fun zombie movie that's all it is, right? It's like, well, you're kind of ignoring the like very obvious themes, they kind of beat you over the head with it of like, hey, this is what the movie's about.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Those people are always usually the ones that they like to speak the loudest and let you know how they feel, especially online.
Exactly. Yeah. Or their lack of feeling is, I think,
Yeah,
the problem.
yeah.
And I don't apologize for anything.
And nor should you.
No, I have a Pete. I don't need to apologize for shit.
That's very true.
He is my ultimate like ace in the hole or
Hmm.
whatever. He's
Yeah.
I've got him. He's got my back.
You've got him on your team. That's what, and
Yeah,
everybody needs a Pete on their team.
they do. Everyone needs a Pete. He'll
Shout
love
out Pete.
hearing that. So we've got the zombies in the basement, and this is definitely the saddest scene in the movie. So you had mentioned, I don't know if we were recording at the time or not, but you mentioned the priest.
Hmm.
And the priest does the last rites for the people, well, the zombies that are
Yeah.
in the basement. And I thought this was a really great example of respecting the dead. Everyone's just kind of desensitized to the dead at this point, and they're not seeing them as humans, or at least the military isn't, right?
Yeah.
And this is going to be some of that theme from post-Vietnam War, seeing the zombies not as people who were once living, but just as the dead. And we've got these residents that these are their loved ones. These are their husbands. It's their wife, their fathers, their children. And they have emotional connections to them and they don't want to just like, they don't know what is happening. Right. And it kind of comes to your belief system as well. Like some people, this is definitely the first movie where they show it, but in other like horror movies and stuff, most iconic scene I can think of is like The Walking Dead, whenever all the dead are in the barn and they're
Hmm.
keeping them there and they believe that they're still alive. You go in there and shoot them, you're killing them. And it's like
Right.
they're dead, but having that boundary, having that respect is so important in being able to value life still, even in these instances. I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think too it's the scene that you see like it kind of breaks Peter. I think just obviously the whole experience in the apartment buildings, but that scene in particular where he's having to shoot each one and then he has to reload and he has to shoot him and keep shooting them, and they really kind of labor over that. You can see his realization, and I think too when the other army guy busts in, he says, "No, it's all done here. It's all done here." And
Yeah.
I kind of took that as like he's not only is it done like that task, but he's kind of talking about the whole thing. Like it's done. Where we've totally fallen apart here. And I think from there, that's where they like we got to get out of here because it's all done here,
Yeah.
And then the scene with the priest right after that is very like poignant as he walks off. He's like, "No, just let me go. I'm in." And they listen to his word, and then like, yeah, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah, and he says, do what they will with them. That's what he
Yeah.
says. So he basically gives them permission from that point on, but no one's asking these people for permission. No one's asking them how they feel about what's happening. No one's stopping to explain what's even happening. It's reactionary. Like there are absolutely no proactive measures in place. Yeah, we've got the zombies in the housing complex are symbolic of the grief that these people are suffering as their loved ones are turned into zombies. Letting go of a loved one isn't easy. And depending
Yeah.
on your belief system, you might not see them as dead.
Yeah.
You might just see them as changed. I'm pretty sure if Pete turned into a zombie, he'd want me to chain him up and keep him alive.
Right. Like the end of Shaun of the Dead,
Yeah.
playing video games in the shed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder too if there's like an element of kind of that post Vietnam feeling, right? People that lost loved ones in that war, and then you're just kind of like, well, just move on, right? The world is trying to move on from that, and you're supposed to just let this go. Oh, it's your loved one down in the basement. Well, no, it's not. It's a zombie, and we got to get rid of it. Like, yeah, it becomes much more complicated than that.
That's a good point. But I will say for that too, I think, there is a certain point even in the army where you're supposed to respect the dead. You're supposed to go back and get the soldier. You're supposed to make sure that they have like a proper funeral and it's not always possible.
Sure.
And I know there are so many times where that wasn't the case and they had to leave their dead behind, and you just had to do whatever you had to do to survive. And
Right.
yeah, I think that is very much a part of it. I think it is like post Vietnam War fatigue that we're seeing in these soldiers. Yeah, and we
Yeah.
see more of it, but it gets like more funny as the time as the movie goes on.
I'm sure some of that's similar as well because they had the same type of thing where, in Vietnam, the U.S. Army's fighting against people that are embedded in civilians. So then you have things like the My Lai massacre where we can't tell who's who, so we're just going to kill everybody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That you see kind of reflected in this same moment, right? Just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, we just got to go in there and get everybody because we don't know who's who, like you said, totally reactionary.
Yeah, exactly. Everything gets kind of blurred. Like if you're like there's us and then there's them,
Right.
right? And then so if you're not part of us, then you must be part of them. You don't even think about trying to verify that information until later. And I mean, that's part of the scary part of, I made a video actually about exactly what you're mentioning, and how it relates to zombie movies and how that is why it's so scary that Trump put,
Oh, the Marines and
yes,
the
the
National
Marines,
Guard, yeah.
not the National Guard, because the National Guard, I mean, the National Guard shouldn't have been there either, but the
Right.
National Guard's a little bit more normalized and
Sure.
they're a
Yeah.
little bit more used to interacting with civilians and helping
Yeah.
after natural disasters and stuff. But to put the Marines with civilians, they are not trained to
Yeah.
be with civilians. They are only trained to see us or them. So
Hmm.
that's like the scary part of having people that are trained like that in streets with our people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's kind of the same thing of that we're seeing like play out in Dawn of the Dead, right? Is you have the people that are at the top clearly are totally out of touch with what's happening on the ground, and then you turn everybody into like a target, right? By
yeah.
putting people out there that are only trained for, combat, right? There becomes no distinction, and it does become just like, well, the solution is just to go clear everybody out, right? It's frightening.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Kind of on that note too, with like post Vietnam War, we've got they're desensitized to violence. It's been normalized for them. Even to the viewer, the horror becomes routine, just as it has to the characters. As we see the zombies getting killed, it's less and less shocking. And as they're making their way, just trying to like, they're in the countryside, there's a group of soldiers that are just like being really silly. Like they're cheering each other on and they're shooting at the zombies. And it's almost like it becomes a sport. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, when they're not like, yeah, nobody's taking it really seriously. They're all out there like all the good old boys are gathered around having a beer and
Yeah.
oh, watch out behind you, and they're shooting, and it's just like, what is going on? Again,
Yeah.
kind of that same. It felt like what would really happen, right? Is just like people still having to go to work, people not taking it seriously, people taking it into their own hands.
Yeah, you're seeing the escalation here. You're seeing
Yeah.
the collapse in stages.
Yeah.
And so it's really funny. Like they're drinking beers. They're just kind of like, yeah, basically they turn it into like arcade games or something. Like,
Hmm. Yeah, it's like it becomes a sport. And then again, it's not really about like helping solve anything, right? It's just kind of, well, we've turned it from being this crisis into being like, hey, it's a fun pastime, right? You and your friends can go shoot the zombies.
exactly.
Not really taking this ever growing problem seriously, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, Romero is very purposeful in blurring those lines between moral and immoral actions and, who's the monster here. And then, so as they make their way, we've got our four main characters, Fran, Steven, Peter, and Roger, and they just happen to come across the shopping mall, and that seems like the perfect place to hold up. It's got everything you could ever want, a consumerist dream, like you could survive there forever.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, it was funny to see like a mall in the golden age of malls. You know, like there's a gun store, there's a grocery store, there's a deli, there's a bank, there's all these things. You know, now I feel like it would be much different now if you tried to hide out in a in a mall. The old mall by my house in Florida was like there was like 2 stores and a movie theater in there.
Malls have kind of become coffins themselves because we have places like Amazon, and online shopping is so big and
Yeah.
everyone's so busy. Like no one wants to go to the store and shop. It's
Yeah.
not the same pastime that it used to be. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would go hang out at the mall, and that's like what we did.
Yeah.
Like mall rats was real.
Yeah, well, and he kind of touches on it in when you're like, why are they coming here? It's like that was really huge in the culture. That was the thing that everybody did, right? And it's like some sort of memory in there that's held over across the zombie line or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It becomes a reflex, like
Yeah,
just a part
exactly.
of your identity, your existence, like shopping, consumerism. And like that was his biggest message, I think, in this. Like there are all these other themes and subtleties and stuff, but really we get the bulk of the movie is going to happen in the mall. And that's where he, I think, was sending the message, at least from what he had said in interviews and things like that. So we've got our survivors, and here's where Romero leans hard into the satire. The dead are drawn to the mall not because it's safe, but because it was an important place in their lives, like you mentioned. And I think it was Steven who he's like hypothesizing that they're coming there because they just remember it's like a mindless repetition. And what's more repetitive than consumer habits? So by flocking to the mall, they act out the same rituals they performed in life, exposing how people often live in a trance-like state, guided by habit, not intention. And I wish that wasn't true, but I definitely feel like a zombie sometimes when I'm driving. If you have
Yeah.
your same daily routine, if you're making your coffee every morning the same way,
Yeah.
like I won't even think about it and it'll just like happen. It's like, oh, I did
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. When you just snap into reality and you're like, it's dinner time. Where did the day go? I woke up and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, it's time to go to bed now.
Yeah.
What did I do today?
Yeah, there's like a whole little bit I have in here. It's called like memory without meaning. So the zombies aren't truly remembering, they're echoing a habit. This presents a chilling vision of humanity as creatures of instinct, not intellect. The implication is that modern life conditions people to such an extent that even stripped of language and consciousness, the body still knows where to go. It's funny, like the contrasting look of the humans versus zombies here, because normally, well, not normally, because this is like the beginning of zombies, right? But nowadays with zombies, they're very grotesque looking.
Yeah.
Like their flesh is falling away.
Yeah, and they're always drooling and bleeding or foaming or whatever.
It's very gross.
Yeah.
They're obviously dead. It's like
Yeah.
you look at them and you're like, that's a zombie. That's dead zombie.
Yeah.
But in the 1978 movie, they are this very bright color. They're almost like a purpley gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like you said, comic booky. They look like you would, like if you were like printing a comic book, you would make them that color, you know?
yeah. And the blood isn't realistic at all.
It's that bright red.
Yeah, and it's very thick.
Yeah.
Very thick. I don't think blood's that thick. No, blood.
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah, I know. I'll go get pee again.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll go get a
Scream Queen on screen demonstration. Is blood as thick as it is in Dawn of the Dead? Here's how we find out.
I think we need this experiment. But he did want to make it look like a comic book. What did you think about the look of the zombies?
I liked it. It definitely does feel very. I don't know if when I first watched it, I was as aware of the intentional like stylization as much as I thought. Oh, maybe it's just because it's from back in the day. That's how they thought zombies would. It also could be. I think in Night of the Living Dead, they say that it's the bodies of the recently deceased. So maybe some of it's that they're like, they haven't had time to like decay, stuff like that. That was another thing I thought about. But I'd never really noticed it until this watch, especially when Fran and it's when the zombie gets up there with her.
Yeah.
You can see like the contrast. He's like, he's like a gray color, you know. They look very like, I mean, they're zombies, but they look drained of life, right? Almost like kind of ghostly figures.
Yeah.
And they walk, their movements are more I don't know what the word would be. I guess exaggerated, right? They now even slow zombies like Walking Dead, they kind of make them more like realistic, or they have like a variation to how they move. A lot of the zombies in this kind of move like Frankenstein's monster.
Once we're in the mall, we've got themes of toxic masculinity going on. I mean, at this point, you would have just called it manliness. It would have been, they were just being men.
Right.
Men being men.
And they even kind of address that when they come back and she's like, hey, you guys just like left me here. Can we like, I'm a fourth vote. Can we talk about like what's going on? Can you let me know what's going on?
Yeah, she's like, she insists on, you know, being part of them, being trained on how to shoot a gun and how to fly the helicopter because she was left alone and then she was attacked. And she didn't know what to do because no one ever paid attention to her. No one ever, you know, saw her as someone that was capable of defending herself. And she's pregnant. She's like, I have to defend myself. Like, you can't just leave me here. We've got our feminist Fran, so I'm calling her now. But basically the first half of the movie, she is ignored. And then she turns out to be this, like, really awesome badass.
Yeah.
And, you know, a final girl, really.
Yeah. She's got the plan. I didn't remember that she was like, that was one of her like requests, that she's like, I'm going to learn to fly the helicopter. And as we were watching, I was like, damn, that's a good idea. You should probably have more than one person that knows how to do that.
And I mean, and she's talking about like Steven was her boyfriend or partner, and he's the one. So she's kind of like in her mind, she's like, he could die. Yeah. She's anticipating his death at some point, and she's like, I have a baby I have to save. She's like, her mother instincts are taking over, I feel like, in these instances, and her like the survival instinct of a mom, I think is maybe a little bit more stronger than like a man, just a man.
Sure. Well, and you see like the pilot, Steven, his unpreparedness in the situations, right? Like when he's trying to shoot the zombies that are attacking Peter, and Peter comes out and puts the gun in his face and is like, dude, you could have shot me. You kind of see those moments where he's kind of lacking, right, in ability. And I think she sees that too. And like you said, it's like, well, something could happen to you. And then what am I supposed to do with our kid, right? Yeah. You definitely see his pushback of, right, like when she's bringing it up, he's doing the whole like, oh, come on, are you serious type act, you know? But she's the most reasonable one the whole time. Like, hey, we should have another pilot. Don't leave me up here by myself. I want to learn how to use a gun. Like,
it's very reasonable things. But, you know, she's a woman, so she must be, you know, just having her woman moments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's funny. I'm glad that you brought up Steven like shooting and trying to help with the zombies, but he ends up being more of a burden. And then, you know, Peter putting the gun in his face. And that's like definitely a moment of like masculinity kind of going wild on both of their sides. And I feel like Steven's just like constantly trying to prove himself because he is probably the least masculine of them. And he's like, I've got to protect my woman. I've got to protect my wife. And, you know, there's more than one way to do that, but he doesn't see that. He sees it as he just has to have the same brute force as everyone else to be able to achieve that.
He almost gets himself killed when they go to, Roger and Peter go to clear the mall basically without him. And they kind of, hey, you stay back here with, you know, like you're talking about with the ladies, you stay back here. And so he feels all emasculated and has to go down into that Pipeworks room. And he almost gets himself killed because he's, like you said, he's trying to be just like them. Right. Yeah. And like, how do I got to prove to them that I'm just as capable as they are. Right. Yeah. He's like, dude, you've got a baby on the way.
Yeah, he's got to prove like he can be just as protective. And it's like there's more than one way to protect your
Yeah.
family. You know, there's a really playful moment with Peter and Roger where, you know, they're getting the trucks and, you know, he's just like so he's kind of losing touch of reality at that point too because
Yeah.
he's so desensitized to the zombies at that point because I think it's been a few months already. The timeline's a little wonky.
Yeah.
But time definitely goes on. Like
Yeah.
Fran is visibly like more pregnant in the movie as the time goes on.
Yeah.
And
And I think you see like snow on the building at one point too. So it's like that they've been in there for a minute.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, we've got Peter that just becomes kind of reckless, like a little kid. He thinks it's fun to run around the zombies and he's been desensitized to it and ends up costing him his life because he gets bit.
I always hate that part. That's another really sad part where he's starting to turn and he's calling out to the other room like, "Where are you? Where are you?" He's, "I'm right here." Like,
Yeah.
that part always gets me. And he's gonna try. He's sitting there with him. And he's like, I'm gonna try my hardest not to turn or whatever he says. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
damn, it was all going so good.
Yeah, it's really sad. And Fran's like, you know, she's very instinctually caring to him. She like wants to get him to a hospital, but they're like, there's nothing out there. Like
Yeah.
there's no way. Yeah, so it's sad because then he gets turned.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you're talking about getting desensitized, and then similar to the guys earlier that we were talking about, where all the good old boys are out there with the army, and people say that all the time with slow zombies. Oh, slow zombies would be so easy. If there was slow zombies, we'd be fine. It's like that's how they get you though, because you're like, no, we're fine. It's slowly creeping up on you. And it's always there. And they only have to get you once, right? You have to be lucky every time. They only have to be lucky one time because it's this slow creeping, thing that's coming up behind you.
Exactly. You know, taking things for granted or, you know, getting sloppy. Like really Peter got sloppy and that's why he ended up losing his life. And then, you know, fucking Steven, because the biker gang comes. Well, okay, so before the biker gang comes, it kind of everything goes dark. I call this the going dark part of the movie because they have radio silence. There's no more broadcasting anymore. Civilization as they know it is now done.
Yeah.
And the mall as a sanctuary ends up feeling more like a prison at that point to them. And then we've got the biker gang that comes. They're just coming to like fuck shit up because that's what they're looters and, you know, but yeah, what did you think about that whole, like, what are your thoughts about that scene?
The biker gang is definitely like, again, it's kind of the playing more on the societal breakdown and what feels like, you know, realistic, right? Because I know too, sometimes people when they watch it, there's criticism of the like the biker gangs like kind of goofy or whatever, and like, oh, why would they do that and just like run around with the zombies? But it's like it feels more true to life, like you're talking about this, where the opportunists come out, and it's kind of just like every man for himself. How can we capitalize on this situation to get the most out of it for me? I cracked up at the scene where they're in the mall and one of the bikers is stealing a TV. Yeah. And the guy's like, what are you going to watch on that? Like, I don't know. And that's kind of like what you're talking about, like the memory without meaning, right? He's just operating. I got to steal a TV. Like, there's no TV to watch, you know? It feels very true to life. And also I like when they're on the radio with him, there's only 3 of us and everybody's cracking up behind him. He's like, does it sound like there's 3 of them to you?
Yeah.
You also had something on here too that I thought was really good, where Steven proposes to Fran, kind of touching on that same thing where Steven's head's kind of always in the wrong place, right? Mm-hmm. Like she's now visibly pregnant. They've lost a member. You know, the world has ended. And I mean, it's a nice gesture, right? Like he wants to get married, but she's kind of like, it wouldn't feel right? It's not real because we got to figure out what we're going to do. The world just ended. There's no more broadcasts. I'm about to have a baby. And your head's kind of like, I don't know. I just thought that was another great point of like, oh, wow, his his heart might be in the right place, but his head's in totally the wrong place.
Yeah, he's like, it's like, I'm not going to plan a fucking wedding in the middle of the apocalypse.
No,
Like,
what are we doing here?
Talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it comes during that scene. They're kind of, Peter's dressed up like a waiter, and they're at the fancy restaurant in the mall, so they're kind of like playing house, right?
Yeah.
But she understands that, like, this is fantasy, and we've got real problems outside the walls of, like, this place that we're in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because I totally went past that in my notes, and it is a really important part. And it's kind of like his toxic masculinity again. He feels emasculated, and he kind of gets depressed because he feels like he was rejected, which is the complete wrong way to interpret that. She loves him. She's not trying to reject him, but like, you have to be realistic.
Yeah.
And
well, and I think there's actually a scene earlier too when they're in the helicopter. They're talking about refueling, and he's talking about stopping at, like, it's either army bases or wherever, and Peter's like we don't have any papers for this helicopter. You stole the helicopter from the news station. He's like, we deserted from the police. Like, we're looters. Like, again, kind of showing his head is like, kind of like the world has changed and his mindset is totally still with the old world, right? Like, he's not really acknowledging the reality of the situation around them,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where are you filing your marriage certificate?
Yeah, it's like, what's the plan here? What are we doing? We can pretend as long as we want, right? But it doesn't change the fact that there's zombies outside, kind of in the same way that, like, he's sort of an analog for those people that stick their heads in the sand to what's going on socially, right?
Yeah.
And you can pretend all you want that these things aren't happening, but it doesn't mean that they're not happening.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. I think he is that archetype for the person that doesn't want to acknowledge the reality of the situation happening around them. Wake the fuck up. No, we're not getting married. No, we're not going to the army base.
Yeah, we can't do that.
And another really funny part too is they steal cash, and they're like using it to play. They're like playing some kind of like game with it, like playing cards using worthless cash. Yeah.
And I think even the biker gang does the same thing. They start stealing a bunch of the money too, which again kind of plays on the consumerist, opportunist, stealing the TV in the same way, right? Like, you can steal all the cash, but the world's over. Where are you going to spend all the cash,
We've been conditioned with all these things all our life. And, it kind of, and that's the great thing about zombie movies, is that it strips all of that away. And it says, what is, social construct? What are the foundations of survival and humanity? What do we have left when everything else is stripped away? And it doesn't always look great. We don't always end up looking that good on that side of things. So the biker gang, you made some really good points about like all the things they were trying to grab and stuff. And then we've got fucking Steven again, trying to prove his manhood. And he already protected them by hiding their space, right? Yeah. He disguised it, and it was very intentional. It was for that reason. If raiders were there, they could hide and they wouldn't be found. But he still puts himself in danger, and he ends up getting injured. And then he also puts Roger at risk. And then he puts everyone at risk, because then he dies, and then he leads a horde of zombies right to where he's been going, because that's his habit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is that same, again, the through line of him, just like, even Peter's, I think at one point they're on the radio and he's like, stop shooting. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, just let them have the mall, and then they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think he says something like, no, it's ours. We found it first, or something like that. Yeah. Again, it's like, I've got to prove something here. all of a sudden your ego trip put everything that you worked for at risk, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I feel bad. Like I didn't not like his character. I feel like I'm being so mean to him and harsh with his character. But at the same time, it's like you just want to shake him. Like he was a
Yeah.
nice guy. He was a good guy. He wasn't doing anything intentionally wrong, but it's like in society too, it's like we have these people that we can sympathize with, but it's also wake the fuck up.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then it kind of reinforces Fran's perspective of like, yeah, no, maybe this is like you care about this person, you love this person, but this is not somebody that you can really rely on, when it comes down to like, I have a child to protect, I've got to figure out how to live in this world, and this person, whether or not they're like, he's a nice guy, his heart's in the right place. Yeah, your ego trip is putting everybody else at risk.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really sad. This is another sad, point as we get to the end of the movie, and Roger is pretty much giving up. He's like, you leave, I'm going to hold them back. You go take the helicopter. He basically is, he's got the gun to his head. Something in him, like something clicks, and I guess he realizes, hey, I just abandoned a pregnant woman by herself, and I'm going to let her go off into the world by herself. Yeah. Like, I think he kind of realized that's like not the thing to do. She at least needs help giving birth.
Well, and I think he has that moment. He realizes it's like, it's not you, it's like, don't give up. There's more fight in him. Yeah. I love the triumphant music as he's doing the like double kick on the zombies on the roof. He's jumping around, kicking zombies. It's so good.
Yeah. And then there's like his last line is like, he asks her how much gas do they have.
Yeah, not much. And
not
like,
much. And he's like, all
okay.
Right. It's like
that ending hits hard.
Now it's going to be time for our game.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is a blind ranking of different zombie horror movies. I have a spinner that you can't see, and then I get to judge you later on your ranking.
Okay, this is gonna be tough.
There are some goofy ones that I threw in there, but I don't even know if they're going to show up because it's on a wheel. All right, so I'm going to spin for the first time. So the first one is Reanimator. Where would you put that on 1 through 5?
1 through 5, maybe like a 3. I'll go 3 for Reanimator.
3 for Reanimator. Dude, Anthony is not going to be happy with that. I will let him know.
It's definitely up there for me, but there's a few others that beat it out, I think.
Well, we'll see waiting. If they're on this list.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, next one. All right, so Resident Evil, the latest one that came out.
Oh, the Welcome to Raccoon City one?
Yes, yeah.
I'll go 5. I did enjoy it. It's very stupid. I mean, that's most of what I enjoy about the Resident Evil movies, per se, is they're pretty dumb. And I like dumb because I'm dumb too.
I mean, I always watch the Resident Evil movies, even Same. When it like becomes really weird and cyborgish. Yeah. They're just fun. All right, so this one is, I'm not going to give you my opinion, but I'll tell you after. Train to Busan. Have you seen that one?
I have. Oof. Okay. I'm still holding out. I'll go 4.
4?
Yeah, I'll go 4.
That movie was so good.
I'm still holding out.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is my problem is I don't know if I should go on the other side of 3 because I feel like I have a good middle and a good end. I just don't know what other movies are going to pop up.
Yeah.
But I think I would say I liked Reanimator. Of those 3, though, I would say I liked Reanimator more, I think, than Train to Busan.
Okay. I mean, yes, they're very different. They're
totally different
movies.
Yeah.
Next one. Dead Alive.
Ooh, Dead Alive. Okay, I'll go number 2 for Dead Alive.
Okay, 2. You're leaving number 1.
Leaving number 1 open.
This really
is the problem. Is now I'm gonna get something like terrible, and I'm gonna have to put it as number 1.
I know. This is like roulette. All right, let's see. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna get something terrible.
The last one that you got is Resident Evil Retribution.
Oh, no, let's see which one that is. I think it's all simulations. Okay, that one is pretty sweet. I wouldn't put it number 1. I was holding out for like a Night of the Living Dead or really any of the first 3 Romero ones. I would have put number 1, but that's fine. I like that one too. That's probably that might be my favorite of the Mila Jovovich Resident Evils.
Oh, really?
She's gone, I think they dyed her hair black in that one, and she's got the is it latex or leather bodysuit that she's like hanging from the ceiling with. It's just, that was a good one.
Okay, yeah. No, yeah, you're right. It is a good one. Now that you're just,
I don't know if I would put it number one, but I backed myself into a corner.
All right. Well, that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you for having me on. This is really fun.
We have spawned our own savagery. Soon it will consume us all.
What is it?
We've got a war.
Now it's time for the true horrors of it all. The Vietnam War had a profound influence on George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, as well as his broader zombie filmography, particularly in how he portrayed violence, media, and the collapse of authority. So in the movie, we have a lot of examples of desensitization to violence, which is a Vietnam legacy. During the Vietnam War, the American public was inundated with graphic images of death and destruction, often broadcast on nightly news. Romero, who grew up watching TV news, became increasingly sensational, saw how audiences were becoming numb to real-life brutality. This carries into Dawn of the Dead. The film's graphic gore, think exploding heads, torn limbs, wasn't just shock. It was a commentary on how society consumes violence without flinching. The zombies are shot down without hesitation, echoing how the military and media during Vietnam showed death as routine. Romero said in an interview, "It's not just the violence of the Vietnam War, it's how we saw it, how it was delivered. We were watching real death every night." The role of media had a huge influence on Dawn of the Dead, and we saw this in the opening of the film. In the opening, Dawn of the Dead takes place in a chaotic television studio where anchors and producers argue over whether to report accurate information or keep people calm. That was a direct jab at how media outlets during Vietnam often downplayed or manipulated truths to maintain control. This represents a distrust in official information, similar to what Americans experience watching their government fumble the narrative on Vietnam War. Something that we're seeing today, especially with social media and all the different forms of information we can get, it can be hard to decipher what's opinion and what's fact. Social media plays into this. If anything, I feel like Romero, if he was alive today, would be even more shocked by the disinformation that is being spread on a daily basis. Another memorable scene from this movie is the militarized police and urban warfare. The SWAT raid at the beginning of Dawn of the Dead, where police storm a tenement full of people of color, brutally killing both humans and zombies, is Romero's clearest reference to the war coming home. The scene mirrors urban violence and militarized responses to U.S. citizens during the Vietnam era. Think Kent State, Detroit riots, and televised police brutality. This scene also critiques racism and state violence, with one officer gleefully murdering residents before being shot by a fellow SWAT member. Then we've got our zombies. Zombies as a post-Vietnam symbol. In Romero's universe, zombies aren't just monsters. They're metaphors for the loss of individuality and consciousness, like soldiers blindly following orders. The inability of systems, military, government, or media to protect and sustain life under pressure. Just as the Vietnam War exposed the moral rot at the heart of American institutions, Dawn of the Dead shows how even a mall full of resources can't save you from collapse. George Romero said in a Fangoria interview, "The Vietnam War was the first war where we saw bodies in the streets. I mean, saw it on the news. That's had a big effect on me. It was the first time we realized we couldn't trust the authorities." Let's end on a high note. Weekly horror updates. the upcoming movie, Weapons, promises a one-time only live stream on Monday, June 23rd. You have to RSVP. You can do that through Bloody Disgusting. I'm actually going to do that right now because I want to make sure that I get in here early. So I made my submission. Hopefully you make yours on June 23rd. It says we invite you to visit maybrookmissing.com for a one-time only live stream that won't be explained, only experienced. Sounds like a good time to me. So 28 Years Later is actually going to be a trilogy with an epic journey. So we got the first of the trilogy was released today in theaters. I actually was able to see it yesterday. I will be giving a spoiler-free review on my social media accounts. I really love the movie. I know that there are people out there that have critiques about it, but I think this is what Danny Boyle and Alex Garland do best. If you didn't know, we have an official Texas Chainsaw Day, which is August 18th. So there's going to be a 4K restoration of Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in theaters for one day only. And it's going to be accompanied by an exclusive sneak peek of the upcoming documentary, Chain Reactions. Jaws is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. And so there's lots of new merch out there for that. You know, people are very excited for Jaws and, you know, the fandom surrounding Jaws. So lots of cool stuff to buy. There's going to be a new Silent Hill movie. It's called Return to Silent Hill, and it's going to be released in theaters in January of 2026. We also have our Silent Night, Deadly Night reboot coming to theaters December 12th of 2015. If you would like to tell me how amazing I'm doing, you can email me at screamqueenpodcaster@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast with new episodes out every Thursday. All the research, writing, and audio is done by yours truly. This is a one-woman show, and I'm doing my very best. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. It really, really means a lot, especially to little indie podcasters like myself. Helps me feel like I'm not screaming into the void as much, but I know that I actually am just, you know, screaming into the void. You can find me on Instagram at Scream Queen Podcaster, Blue Sky at Scream Queen Podcast, TikTok at Scream Queen Podcast, and there's a link tree that will take you to my YouTube and Facebook page as well. Remember, when there's no room left in hell, the dead will walk the earth.